John, I'm interested to know about your youth and where you were brought up. Your dad was a bookie, is that right?
It was an illegal bookie. Illegal. He'd take bets at the kiosk. Not big bets, small bets. However, there come a time when the government that was in control didn't want no more illegal gambling, and they decided to make it legal. You had to have then uh, a license, which was you had to go to a court, mostly a stipendiary court, to get apply for the license. Now, a funny story. My dad now, it was £100 the permit. He then went to the court to get his permit, and he had a man to get it for him, a lovely man called a QC called Peter Burge. However, my dad got in the box, applied for the permit, and the prosecutor said to the judge, he said, how can you give this man a permit, a licence? He's got 170 convictions for being illegal. Burge got up. He said, sir, he said, this is why we're here today. To stop illegal gambling, and the government want it now all straight and above board. Shops are going to be introduced where people can walk in freely, have a bet, not doing nothing wrong, and that instead of having a bet with a street bookie who betting under sheds and pubs, and anyway, that was that. I was very young at the time, but the start of me, I used to do a paper round for my mum and dad at the kiosk. I used to enter the horses on the bets he'd taken, and that was how I started. Punting a very young age, but unfortunately I loved the skinny one, and I'd get ironed out with regularity. But I then went to Oxford Street, where I became a selling out a suitcase, and I'd get a few quid. I'd go to Aldgate on a Sunday morning, was very, very good, and I started to get a few quid, but still loved the skinny one. It was like a prostitute's knickers. I'd be up and down. But I then went on to, as I say, I went to White City. I used to love White City, Thursday and Saturday. There was only 8 races, but there was plenty of money around. 2 guys in White City were the pop stars. Was a man called Philly L and Manny King. And unfortunately, Manny King had a lovely clerk. His name was Johnny Hogan, but he had a drink problem. This particular Thursday night, he couldn't go to work, Manny. He had no clerk. So a fellow that worked for him, he said, Manny, he said, he's here. I know he's young, he said, but he's here, Johnny Lights. He said, he can clerk. I then started clerking for Manny King. I lasted about 18 months, Thursdays and Saturdays, but, you know, I never drew my wages. I'd do it on a skinny one, work for nothing. Then, as I say, the World Cup come along and I got going. From the tank being 50 quid, 100 quid, 1.5, it was now, you know, quite strong, 10 or 15.
Can you explain how you got the money at the World Cup?
Pardon?
Can you explain how you got the money at the World Cup?
Well, what happened was people, supporters of the 32 teams, different supporters, travelled miles. You know, Italy, France, Spain, some North American teams, pretty weak teams, but however, had their whack of supporters. But what happened was the supporters would have to buy their tickets in a block. It became cheaper. First round of the World Cup, they were cheaper than the next round. And as the competition went on, the tickets, which they bought, were more expensive. However, what happened was sides that come Brazil, Ecuador, and they travelled from the other side of the world. And it came to the position where once their side got knocked out at the end of the first batch of games, their tickets were, you know, they were no good because they were no longer interested in it. And it was either put the tickets in a bin or sell them to us at, you know, you could bid them and you buy them pretty cheap. And thank God, England went on to win, as you know, and the tickets became, with England going to Wembley in the final, they became more and more valuable. And from now on being worthless, at one stage, they became pretty valuable. I then, as I say, got on my feet while the World Cup was on. I also used to be at a show. Andrew Lloyd Webber had a show called Cats, and fortunately I was playing with a guy who was selling the tickets in the Cats office, and we used to, I know to sell them to different black bucket ticket shops, and touch wood, it was a very successful time for me. Now, what with the World Cup, what with the cat show, I also by then had a share in a bureau de change in the Royal Mews, just stone's throw from Buckingham Palace. And some very rich people from other countries would visit England, and it was pretty good business for us because we used to buy and sell money. We charged 9% commission, and at 3:30 every day the bank's closed, and instead of having one ball, we take that in and we get out what we used to call the flint board. and it was pretty good. And then I started going to I packed up with Manny because, as I say, I couldn't never draw me wages. Started to go to the races, and that was it. I had a period where I was doing no good at all before that, and I used to work in Oxford Street, and not many things I can do in my life, but I can count, and I could make a pin pellet watch. I could make it sound as if it were a Longines, or I was very good at selling in the street. In them days it wasn't serious, but you get nicked for highway obstruction. And the following morning you had to go to Marlborough Street Court and supposition, go in the box. The magistrate was called John Harmsworth. We'd go in the box. John, you were arrested 4 times in Oxford Street yesterday. Do you plead guilty on the first or on the first we deal with? Plead guilty or not guilty? Guilty, sir. Guilty, guilty, guilty. At the end, he'd say, have you anything to say? The answer would be, don't want to waste your time, sir. And although he was a stipendiary magistrate, when the court 10 o'clock, on to go with the drunks, maybe 10 or 20 drunks. They'd get found there £1 or half a quid, whatever. Then it was deal with the street traders. And a funny story, we had a guy out there was friendly with. His name was Jake, and he was very, very funny. And this particular morning, his name was David. Armswood said to him, morning, David. Say, morning, sir. He said, he was arrested twice yesterday. Highway obstruction. First one guilty or not guilty. Second one guilty. Plead guilty on both. He then said to Armsworth, he said, sir, he said, I went to the White City last night and went skint. He said, if you find me any more than a tenner on each, you'll have to lend it to me. And all my life I've been round people that were funny and, witty. From there, I got going a bit, went back to the races, and then, as I say, thank God, the World Cup came along, and it started to happen for me. What with the Bureau, what with the show Cats, and having a fair tank now I've built up over being around the grounds in the World Cup. The tank, where it was always 20 quid, 40 quid, 80 quid, if I had a touch it'd be a monkey 600 quid. And as I say, invariably I'd get ironed out. But what with the World Cup, the Cats and the Bureau, I run into a fair bit of money. The tank would have been 20 or 30 grand.
It's a lot of money in 1966.
Well, it's a lot of money now, but in 1966, believe me, Simon, it was a fortune. And I decided that I was going back to the races. I had learnt a bit by then because I've got older, and where I used to murder me money in handicaps and grounds, I decided that this is my chance.